A recent call by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is for the Alberta government to rein in spending and no new taxes. Now, the group says Albertans are still hurting financially. A recent report says 160,000 Albertans have lost their jobs since February, and more small businesses are at risk of shutting down permanently during the COVID-19 pandemic. To discuss this in more detail and what's happening with the UCP government is Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, Hal.
Nathan, let's talk about 160,000 jobs lost since February. What's the province doing to get Albertans working again?
Well, that's the basis for our $10 billion, record-setting $10 billion investment in infrastructure. We know that infrastructure is the work that puts people to work. We want to invest strategically, and some of that is in agriculture, in Lethbridge. The Exhibition Park started that, Highway 320, and those projects are really going to help that industry grow.
What can we really do to help this become an agriculture hub for the entire province, or maybe even for Canada?
Well, it already is, but we need to get that message out there. So one of the things that I've been working on with ministers up in Edmonton is to do a trade mission out of Lethbridge to really support our agricultural industry, not just our ag products, but also the food processing products and our seed. Our seed now can grow some of the greatest crops in the world, and we're highly recognized for that.
Now, the province has a $24.2 billion deficit this year. How is the government planning on getting the spending under control and try to get back to black with our books?
That's
and it's tough during a pandemic,
right? It's
a
really tough challenge, right? We know you can't dig your way out of a hole. We need to develop and get our economy back. You can't tax something that's not there. So that's job number one. We've got to build our economy back, got to get people back to work, and then we can look at additional measures going forward.
Some people talking about a provincial sales tax, potentially maybe an HST, 8% from the province, 5% federally, but you say there's a bit of a danger with that, and why is that?
I think there really is a danger. We don't know what the federal government's going to do with their tax rate. They've spent $300 billion in counting, and if they adjust the GST from 5% to 8 or 9 or 10%, to add a provincial sales tax on top of that could be really damaging. So one is there's other jurisdictional taxes to be aware of. Two is we need people to get back on their feet and then see what we can do. There might be some tax reform that we can discuss in the future, understanding that provincial sales tax might be more efficient, but it's not a silver bullet. And we want to make sure that we protect those who are on fixed incomes. I'm really aware of seniors in Lethbridge as a retirement town. Any tax rate increase really impacts them. Their income doesn't necessarily go up. So I want to make sure that we do that in a very measured way, if we do that at all.
As a born and raised Albertan, I always loved the Alberta advantage, and that means no provincial sales tax. We've just had the GST, so what would make us any different from any other province? What have you heard from your constituents? Are they actually open to an HST or a PST here in the province?
I think there's a bit of a spectrum for people's response to that. I think there is an understanding that it is a very efficient tax as opposed to other ways of taxation, so that there is a debate that needs to be had about that. But again, it's not the silver bullet. If you add that level of taxation, you may have to do other things that you take back to protect other segments of our population, like I've mentioned. So it's not going to just make billions and billions of dollars for us. A 1% tax could bring in provincially about $1 billion. So even a 5% tax would be $5 billion, which is a long way from the $24 billion deficit.
Will the UCP government potentially hold a referendum asking Albertans if they want to see a provincial sales tax?
Our Premier and our party is committed to that. If there was any kind of taxation, like a provincial sales tax, that would go to referendum, yes.
Okay, let's talk about back to school now, education. It's been on a lot of people's minds. A lot of parents and teachers are quite concerned about sending their kids back to school during the pandemic. Last report, more than 16 schools across the province have some either students or staff infected with COVID-19. Many people are saying we opened up too soon. What are your thoughts?
I don't think we opened up too soon. There is lots of speculation all over the map of what to do, and sometimes you need to just start and see what you can learn. Dr. Dina Hinshaw has been working with the Minister of Education all the way through this process. I know our two superintendents, Dr. Cheryl Gilmore and Ken Sampson, have done a tremendous job meeting almost every day since schools were closed in March to come up with a plan. And sometimes you just need to start and see how it's worked. Many of those schools, the transmission is not at the school. It was outside of that, at home in the community somewhere else. And they've done a great job. The process is working. It's identified those cases early. It's put in the measures to protect others immediately. And we need to get things back to normal, and they're very, very, very low risk to students in transmission.
Let's talk about the recent anti-mask rally, or I guess freedom rally that they had at Henderson Lake Park here in Lethbridge. Over 100 people got together. They were angry at the municipal bylaw, the face covering bylaw. They say they weren't consulted. There was no, referendum here in the city about that in that regard. What are your thoughts about some of these face covering bylaws in Calgary, Edmonton, and now here in Lethbridge?
I'm actually quite concerned about them. I understand that you need to wear masks where you can't social distance, and I think it behooves us to respect others and take care of them. But what a bylaw doesn't do is it doesn't allow for differentiation to those who can't wear a mask for a medical reason or a condition that would prevent them from doing so, or for those hard of hearing and deaf. It really impacts their ability to go about their lives normally. And when you're unable to police that, with bylaw officers, then what you really open the door to is vigilantism, where citizens are accosting other citizens for not wearing a mask without finding the story behind that. Our police officers, our bylaw officers are trained to help those situations, to ask questions, and I think we run a lot of risk of turning citizen against citizen, and that's one of my primary concerns.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a backlog of surgeries. Many surgeries have been canceled. What's the province doing to try and help Albertans get back on track in that regard?
We really want to open up surgical suites that are there, make sure that we get those elective surgeries back online. We're beginning to do that now that we have measures in place to limit COVID. And then we're also looking at additional private surgical suites to really get those people through the line. And we have some opportunities here in Lethbridge that we're also trying to work with that can really help serve the people's needs.
How can you really put people's fears at ease that Jason Kenney and the UCP is not turning this into a two-tiered health system, similar to the United States?
Sure, and it's not similar to the United States at all. I've done a lot of research. There's somewhere around 133 public delivered healthcare systems around the world. Almost all of them have some component of private pay. Even the United Kingdom's health service has that and has since inception. So actually we're looking at a model more like the UK, a more of a European style model. But the biggest thing to remember is all of these services are still publicly funded. And that's the difference. Doctors have always been private practitioners. So they get paid, but they get paid with public dollars. And I think that's what people need to remember and put their minds at ease, that we're trying to get them access to service to some of the highest quality doctors in the world right here in Alberta.
Many doctors are not happy with Health Minister Tyler Chandler right now. How can we keep our doctors happy and keep them here in the province?
I think it's about ongoing discussion, and this is hard. And it's not simple. I know that there's been different things floated, different ideas floated out there. Why don't we just reduce the fee by 5%? But it's a real tough balance. It's not just the percent of the fee, it's also the volume of patients. If you're a private contractor any in the world doing anything, construction, and you have to charge less per hour for a job, well, you just do more jobs. That's the same situation that the province faces here with doctors. And we have to limit the volume as well as the fee. And that's a tough conversation, and I really respect the doctors in Lethbridge for the services they provide. And not all doctors provide the same kind of service. Some are there 24/7. And that's a different fee model than those who are doing something by volume. So there's a lot of nuance and specialties that need to be addressed in that model.
Federal Conservative leader Erin O'Toole recently met with Quebec Premier Francois Legault, and they talked pipelines, and obviously Energy East is off the table. Premier Jason Kenney said it's been off the table since 2017 with the Liberals. Nathan, let me ask you something. Do you think we'll ever see a west to east pipeline in our country?
Well, I hope so. I really do. I think last winter when we had the rail lines go down, we really realized the need for that pipeline, that consistent access, as well as it's the most environmentally protecting kind of way to transport bitumen. And a lot of times we hear people saying, well, we need that refinery in Alberta. That would actually result in us needing more pipelines, because then every different type of gasoline, diesel, and other byproducts would have to be separated out.
You can't send them all down the same pipeline.
We can't send them on down their own one pipe. So yeah, it's a big challenge.
What's the plan moving forward in 2021? Because southwestern Alberta is big in agriculture, but how can we really support our farmers here down in Lethbridge?
Our farmers here are world-renowned. We've already done some $10 million of investment into our irrigation system, and we're looking at doing more. And I just want people to know, I didn't really know this until just recently, that 70% of irrigated land in Canada is right here in southern Alberta. We are a world leader in terms of market production and irrigation and land access. Again, we just need to get that message out. We've got some great corporate sponsors that have come here for that. As we continue to develop that, do the Highway 3 twinning, add to irrigation, add to that infrastructure, that will just increase our ability to get that to market. And like I said, I'm working with the Minister of Innovation and Trade to try to get a trade mission going.
Let's talk about the opioid crisis. It hasn't gone away even though COVID-19 is here right now, Nathan. The province yanked the funding for ARCHES and the supervised consumption site. Now the province has implemented a mobile SES by the soup kitchen here in Lethbridge. But some people are saying that's not enough. We need more intox, detox beds to really help the most vulnerable, those who are struggling with drug addiction. Your thoughts?
Well, we have addressed that, taking it from a one-pillared approach to a multi-pillared approach, and we've done exactly that. Intox and detox is being worked on right now here in Lethbridge, and we've committed $10 million to 2 recovery sites in southern Alberta, one here in Lethbridge and one in the Blood Tribe. That's going to increase access to 125 beds for treatment and recovery, because at the end of the day, we don't want to just stop people from dying, we want them to return to living.
Now, earlier this year, we heard from Minister Schweitzer talking about the plans for a drug court in our city. Why don't you explain to our viewers exactly how a drug court works and why it's necessary? When can we expect one to open here in Lethbridge?
I don't have an exact time for you. It has been delayed because of COVID, so they're working on that. And basically what it does is it seeks to divert those individuals who aren't really hardened criminals away from the criminal justice system to something that will address their needs. If they're stealing to pay for an addiction, we need to help address the addiction before we can stop the stealing. That's what drug courts are meant to do, and be creative with that, and Lethbridge has got a really great opportunity.
Schweitzer's now the Innovation Minister. Casey Medew is the new Justice Minister, our province's first Black Justice Minister, which is pretty cool. Now, with the cabinet shuffle, do you foresee less attention brought to rural crime and a deeper focus on municipal policing?
No, I think rural crime is still very, very important to many Albertans. So that will continue to be something that we work on. There will be an additional focus to municipal policing and how we work with municipalities as we rebuild from COVID and the recovery efforts there.
Now, many of our viewers have asked, why do we actually need a provincial police force? The RCMP is doing a great job. You know, it's been around forever. What are your thoughts? Because I know Kenny's pushing for that.
For sure.
Police force.
And it is very distinct that the RCMP hold a lot more prestige and heritage and tradition for those who dwell in major centers and cities. But out in the rural areas, it's a very different story. And it's not, again, it's not with the individuals that are the RCMP officers. It's the ability to resource. It's the administrative support, which comes from Ottawa, not from Alberta. So to really address the needs of someone who lives in a rural community that is probably a half hour away from the detachment, possibly an hour away from a police officer, that response is not as great and is not as good as they need, which is why we've seen some of these farmers taking efforts to defend their lives in their own hands, which is again, is not what we want. We want to support them. So that's why we're looking at it so seriously.
Nathan, a recent poll by Angus Reid says Albertans are frustrated with Ottawa and are considering separation. I think the number is close to 8 or 9% now, getting close to 10 points. What do you say to those Albertans who want to leave Confederation? They've had enough.
Yeah, and I want them to hear very, very clearly that we hear their frustration, we hear their concerns, but really economically, the best place for Alberta is within Canada. We need that trade. If you go back to Quebec, when they talked separation, they saw their house prices drop by 50% overnight. We can't add that on top of everything that else is going on right now. We know it's frustrating. We're trying to address those issues. We're trying to put forward really clear objectives for Alberta to be strong within Confederation. I think that we're on track to make that voice heard, and we want to work within Canada right now.
We've talked about COVID-19, the opioid crisis, attracting more business to our city. Moving forward into 2021, it's hard to believe that the year's almost over now. Many people want to put 2020 behind us, right, with all the challenges we have. What do you see are the major issues here in our city moving forward that we need to address?
Well, I think we just need to understand that we all need to live and learn and work together. We do. We have a spectrum of people that don't even want to admit that COVID-19 is a pandemic, and we have those that are very, very concerned about their livelihoods and their lives. We need to work together. We need to work with respect for one another. We need to get people back to work so we can rebuild our economy, because we're starting to see a huge spike in mental health challenges, suicides, we've noted in Southern
Anxiety,
Alberta.
depression going through the roof.
Exactly. So those are very, very concerning. We need to get people back to work safely and with respect for wherever people are on that spectrum.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, thanks for your time today.
You're welcome, Al. Thank you.